Analysing a poem for metre can be much more difficult than people sometimes indicate. Let's take this poem, A Robin by Walter de la Mare, and let's look at how it works. Let's just look at the first stanza. Ghost grey, the fall of night, ice-bound the lane, lone in the dying light, flits he again, lurking where shadows steal, perched in his coat of blood, man's homestead at his heel, death still the wood. Now, the thing with working out metre is this. You have to work out where the stress goes on each word or each part of a word. And if you're not sure what it is, imagine if you were shouting out to someone at a distance this poem. Which words would you naturally emphasise? Because English is a language of emphasis on certain syllables. So, ghost grey. You wouldn't say ghost grey, you'd say ghost grey. You wouldn't say the fall, because a word that's non-lexical like the is very often not emphasised. So the fall of night, you see, of is not such the emphasis, night. Ghost grey, the fall of night. You see? So here I would say ghost, fall and night are the syllables that are emphasised. Now if you break this down into feet, and the word feet means the metrical unit, in other words, you go from the pattern is emphasis, no emphasis, no emphasis, emphasis, no emphasis, emphasis. Now the pattern of that means that we've got 3 sections in that line. Ghost grey, the fall of night. So they're called feet. 3 feet is a trimeter. 5 feet is a pentameter. So you've got a trimeter. Now here's the thing. Stress, no stress. No stress, stress, no. So it's not a regular pattern. It's gone from what we call trochaic or trochee, you see that, to an iamb. An iamb is no stress, then stress, no stress, then stress. So within the same line, you've got trochee, ghost grey, tiger, tiger, burning bright, that famous example of trochee, and iamb, to be or not to be, the fall of night. The fall of night. See where the focuses are. So if you want to analyse this poem, you'd say the first line is a trimeter, but consisting of a mixture of trochee, the first one, and iamb, the second 2. So the baseline, if you like, is iambic, but it varies because he's put a trochaic in. Now here's the really difficult question. Why is it done in this way? Well, maybe in this case, Walter de la Mare, who was an expert, by the way, on rhythm, metre and rhyme. I mean, you've only got to read the listeners and see the beauty of that music. But what you've got here is you've got, listen to how it works. Ghost grey, the fall of night, icebound the lane, lone in the dying light, flits he again, lurking where shadows still, perched in his coat of blood, man's homestead at his hill, death still the wood. So combining with the meaning of the words, this little robin rushing around, you've also got the fact that the flitting of from trochaic to iambic each time seems to mirror the flitting of the bird's actions. You see the second line there, if you look, the second line is trochaic iambic, and it's dimeter because it's only 2 feet. You might say, how do you work out the foot? Well, it's the pattern. Stress, no stress, no stress, stress. So the pattern is 2 feet in that line. The next line is back to 3, look. Lone in, the die in light. So wherever you have a stress on a syllable, it shows you where the pattern is. Now you might have 2 stresses in a foot. In this case, we have 1. Lone in, the die in light. So the first lone in is trochaic because we put the focus on the first syllable. Then the next 2 are iambs, the die in light. Because you wouldn't say the die in light. You wouldn't say it like that. You'd say lone in, the die in light. So it's where the natural rhythms are coming. Fits he again. See how that switched to 2 dimeter? Trochaic, iambic. So he's mixing trochaic, iambic. Lurkin, where shad does still. Lurkin, where shad does still. You wouldn't say lurkin, where shad, or where shad does still. That's not natural. So the poetry picks up the natural emphasis and turns it into a pattern. And it's the pattern that produces expectation of what's to come, which is part of the magic of poetry. Lurkin, where shad does still. So trochaic and 2 iambs. So trimeter, because there's 3 feet, right? But the first one is trochaic, the second 2 are iambs, and as there's 2's more than 1, we call it the baseline iambic, but with variations to produce these effects. Perched in his coat of blood. See again? Trochaic, 2 iambs. So strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, strong. That's the pattern. Man's homestead at his hill. You wouldn't say man's home stead at his hill. You wouldn't say that. You put the focus, there's certain syllables man's home stead at his hill. Death still the wood. Now you don't necessarily have the same level of emphasis on one. It's the comparison between the weak and the strong in the line. So this time I read it one last time, but just look at here, where the focus comes as you look at it, which I've highlighted in green. Ghost grey, the fall of night. Ice-bound the lane, lone in the dying light. Flits he again, lurking where shadows steal. Perched in his coat of blood, man's homestead at his hill. Death still the wood. I've emphasised it a little bit, but you try reading it out loud yourself and you'll see where the natural rhythms go. And I hope that was useful in this quite tricky area of metre and how you analyse it and how you work out where the feet are, where the stress in the foot comes, and how that translates into a technical name like trochaic iambic, and more importantly, how what the poet has done helps with the meaning he's trying to get across. In this case, because the emphasis is flitting around on the words and in the lines, it beautifully mirrors the flitting around of the bird as it flits around the trees. Well, I hope that was useful to you.